Alan is a homeless jerk who gets kicked out of his own home for being good for nothing. Even though he wants to lead a low-key life, his real powers get revealed when he comes across a princess and her useless knight. This marks the beginning of Alan's journey of forging the greatest harem of all time. In every world, heroes are divine beings that rid the world of evil and establish peace. However, for these heroes, a tragic fate awaits as some of them get betrayed by their own comrades, while others fall prey to enemies' cunning traps. Their tragic fates are owing to the immense power they possess, since people start fearing them and eventually ostracize them. Despite all this, there's a hero that remained loyal to his title and kept fighting for the people. After saving the world, he prayed to the gods to be reincarnated into another world without Truck-Kun's assistance. In the present, Alan gets awakened by his scumbag brother, who deems him a deadbeat and informs him that their father has summoned him. Pretending to be a homeless jerk, Alan follows him without changing clothes or even washing his face. On their way, his schizophrenic brother keeps yapping about him being utter trash and how he has been waiting for this moment. Alan was born into the House of Westfeld 15 years ago, and all this time, he hasn't leveled up one bit, with all his stats being below average as well. It was also discovered that Alan possesses no gift at the blessing ceremony held the other day. According to his father, every child is born with a gift as a favor from the gods. But being the worthless loser he is, Alan gets disowned by the gods as well. With this, Alan gets banished by his family and gets kicked out. Despite all this, Alan is insanely overjoyed because he has been waiting for this moment. He wasn't expecting to be reincarnated as the son of such an awful duke and decides to venture to the outskirts. Owing to his insane plot armor, Alan still possesses his hero abilities from his previous life. On his way, he notices a woman with two massive reasons to be liked by others fighting some monsters. He immediately recognizes her as the first princess, Lisa Adestella, and reminisces about the time when Lisa stood up for his sorry ass when nobles were mocking him for being useless. Meanwhile, Lisa's knight urges her to escape, but being a dumb woman, the princess starts crying like a and sits there like an NPC. Even though Alan had no intentions of using his powers, he refuses to let his friend die, and rushes to help her. As the monsters are about to finish her off, Alan appears out of nowhere and saves her sorry ass. He then proceeds to defeat the remaining monsters as well after discovering their cores. Meanwhile, the knight apologizes to Lisa for being an incompetent, but Alan heals her wounds. Lisa and the knight question Alan regarding his overwhelming abilities, but he makes some random excuses and gets away with it. The princess then reveals that she had received a divine revelation and was guided towards the Clume village for some reason. Even though she regrets having that useless nobody as her knight, there's nothing she can do. With this, Alan suggests that they continue their conversation at some other place and fixes the carriage. On their way, Alan reveals whatever transpired with him, but he doesn't give a Even though it would be quite useful to the kingdom, being an introvert, Alan hates people and wants to stay away from them. For some reason, they are now traveling together as they eventually reach the Clume village, which was awfully quiet. Alan also comments on the absence of monsters on their way and wonders if something is scaring them off. After roaming around for a while, they notice some villagers gathered at a place where a flat-chested girl gets kicked out of an old man's house. It turns out the girl is the current hero, Akira. Having the memory of a goldfish, Akira refuses to recognize Lisa and gets scolded for it. Akira also possesses the ultimate gift, Braver, and according to Lisa's revelation, she has to save this useless hero. Before proceeding further, Akira suggests that they have lunch, where she explains that they have to slay a dragon. She explains that on her way to the village, she came across a girl who had escaped from the village. The girl tells her that the village wants to sacrifice her to the dragon for protection. Akira tried negotiating with the village chief, but got kicked out because she was way too flat-chested. With no other option left, she has to slay the dragon herself. Upon hearing this, Alan tells her the entire village depends on that dragon to protect them, but Akira doesn't give flying F's about them and persists with her decision. Lisa also follows her because she is supposed to protect that useless hero. Alan realizes that even though Akira looks like a femboy, she's actually a woman and cannot possibly achieve anything on her own. He decides to help them. On their way, Akira proposes that she faces the dragon head-on, while Alan and the others ambush him from behind. Alan, however, suggests that he faces the dragon alone, but Akira's overconfident doesn't allow that, and she persists with her plan. She has also realized that Alan possesses some special abilities and wants to explore them afterwards. As soon as the battle begins, Akira strikes the dragon with all of her might, only to discover that her attacks are just as useless as my conversation skills with women. The dragon mocks her and smashes her into a rock. Just as the dragon is about to finish her, Alan comes in clutch and saves her sorry ass. He cuts off the dragon's wing and challenges it to a battle. With the battle going in Akira's favor, the dragon becomes a coward and takes Akira and the others as hostage. Alan, however, doesn't care about them and slays the dragon nevertheless. At this point, he has realized that gender equality is just a myth and these women cannot do anything alone. So, he decides to travel alongside them. The following morning, Alan wakes up to find Lisa staring at him like a creep as he questions the others. She tells him that Akira and her useless knight are sparring, even though their sword skills suck just like my grades this semester. Previously, Lisa had healed Akira using her magic, and it is revealed that she is actually a saintess. She apologizes for not telling him earlier, but Alan understands her circumstances. He reassures her that her secret is safe with him, and with this, Akira challenges Alan to a battle, knowing that she would get folded immediately. Following this, as they are about to leave, Akira decides to travel alone and take the girl alongside her as well, since she doesn't want to travel in a wagon. Akira also apologizes for relying on Alan way too much and just realized that she is a pathetic loser. Alan realizes that she's an attention seeker just like you all, and needs his validation, so he offers some words of reassurance. With this, Akira leaves alongside the girl, with Alan and the others commencing their own journey. With all this going on, a cheap version of Sherlock Holmes informs Alan's father regarding the dragon's demise, as their plan was to take down Akira using the dragon. The guy further informs him about the possible involvement of the Saintess and decides to take down both of them. Alan's scumbag father further questions the guy regarding some elf, as he tells him that he'll handle the situation himself. Meanwhile, Lisa informs Alan that her friend is a swordsmith in a nearby village and was wondering if she can forge a sword for him. Alan shamelessly agrees to this because he's a homeless jerk who doesn't have any money. At night, Lisa accidentally falls asleep on Alan's lap and gets embarrassed. It is then revealed that Alan and Lisa were previously engaged to each other, which further embarrasses her. Well, she eventually ends up falling asleep on his shoulder, which turns Alan on, but he holds his nasty desire back. He then reminisces about the time when Lisa started simping on him, but he was way too young to understand her, not like he can understand women anyways. The following day, they reach the town where Lisa's friend lives and reach her home. Upon reaching there, Alan wonders if she's really a swordsmith or they're about to get bamboozled, but he decides to trust Lisa and enters the home, hoping this isn't the start of another harem anime plot. As soon as they enter, they come across Noelle lying on the floor, which scares Lisa, but it turns out that Noelle was just exhausted and taking a nap. Lisa heals her and Noelle wakes up. Following formal introductions, Lisa asks Noelle to forge a sword for Alan, but gets brutally rejected as Noelle tells her that she is already stacked with multiple orders. Seeing Lisa's persistence, Noelle appraises Alan's old sword and realizes that it has been utilized to its full potential and changes her mind. She aspires to forge a sword that far surpasses the divine sword that heroes wield and kicks all of them out. All of this reminds her of a person named Vanessa who had inspired her to become a swordsmith and vows to forge the greatest sword of all time. As Alan and the others are heading towards the town, another flat-chested girl is spying on them and reports this to the cheap Sherlock Holmes, who wonders who the fuck Alan is. Meanwhile, Alan was getting bored, so Lisa suggests that he visits the Adventurers Guild and trade the Red Dragon scales for some money, since she cannot feed a pathetic freeloader like that anymore owing to the inflation. Upon reaching the guild, Alan approaches the receptionist and asks her to exchange the scales for money, but the dumb receptionist gets shocked because she has never seen Red Dragon scales her entire life. Just then, the old butler and the flat-chested girl appear at the spot and question Alan regarding his adventures. The guy introduces himself as Horace and the girl as Mylene. He tells him that he's a jobless guy who is quite interested in hearing adventurers' stories. Seizing the opportunity to show off, Alan reveals everything to Horace, who leaves afterwards. Horace also realizes that Alan is a weak nobody who cannot even beat Yamcha, but Mylene is still a bit concerned about him. After some time, Alan and the others visit Noelle to get some update, only to find her collapsed on the ground. Lisa heals her, and it turns out that Alan's sword is already prepared, as she is way too excited for him to wield it. Later on, both of them visit the forest as Alan tells her that he could have tested the sword himself, but Noelle wanted to see his sword skills too. On their way, Alan's racist ass asks why she became a swordsmith, since dwarves are more suited for this job. Noelle tells him that the woman who raised her was a dwarf, and even though she didn't teach her anything about sword forging, she still learned a lot from her. As they continue their journey, Alan comes across Horace and his lackey once again, who question him about his job and leaves. Horace asks Mylene to follow Alan using her stealth skill. Following this, Alan slays some weak monsters as Noelle realizes that he is actually a flawless swordsman. She then decides to fight some stronger monsters and takes Alan to a deeper part of the forest. Upon reaching there, she notices that there aren't any monsters here, as they eventually come across a massive monster who had devoured Noelle's master, Vanessa. Vanessa keeps striking the sword while Noelle literally begs for her attention. She even tells her that she is hungry, but Vanessa doesn't give a shit about her and continues her work. Agitated, Noelle decides to eat whatever she finds in the house. She then grabs a massive sword and attempts to swing it around, but the sword was way too heavy for her and she ends up falling. Inspired by Goku's parenting skills, Vanessa keeps ignoring Noelle, and no wonder she ended up a failure like Gohan. The following day, Vanessa is finally done with her work and smiles. In the present, Noelle asks Alan to kill the monster, but Alan brutally refuses, stating that he doesn't have a reason to kill it and that it hasn't attacked them. Hearing this, Noelle grabs his sword and proceeds to attack the monster. Alan reminds her that she is just as useless as Zenitsu when he's awake, and her attack won't even tickle the monster. He further tells her that the monster is surrounded by a barrier and only a sacred sword can pierce it. Noelle believes that her sword is superior to a sacred sword, but Alan humbles her down by saying that it is nowhere near a sacred sword. Following this, Alan proceeds back to his inn where he meets Lise and her good-for-nothing knight, and informs them about the monster. He then questions their objective of visiting this town since they are not here just to get Alan a sword. Lise reveals that they are here to investigate the murder of their strongest general. According to them, various gifts have been used to investigate this case, but all in vain. This makes them believe that a demon is behind all this. Meanwhile, the weird butler instructs his flat-chested Lolly to take down Lise and Noelle. This shocks Lolly, but the butler reminds her that she has no other choice as a slave collar appears around her neck. Later on, Noelle proceeds to work on her sword after Alan provides her with some information on how to improve it. She keeps hitting the sword, just like my abusive ex used to hit me, and ends up falling unconscious. Back in time, the butler had ambushed Vanessa in order to kill her, owing to her exceptional talent since they cannot afford having keen swords rivaling the sacred sword. Vanessa attempts to take down the monster by herself, but her sword was way too weak to penetrate the monster's barrier, and she ended up getting devoured by the monster. The butler also wanted to finish off Noelle, but the useless hero appears in the clutch and saves her. Despite being a femboy, she somehow managed to damage the monster, and seeing this, the butler decides to escape. Even though Vanessa treated Nicole like Sakura, she still cared about him and cannot believe her sword shattered into pieces. From that day onward, fulfilling Vanessa's dream became Noelle's passion. In the present, after completing Alan's sword, Noelle ventures into the forest to take her revenge. She attempts to attack the monster, and this time around, she manages to wake it up and get smashed into a tree. Just then, the butler also appears at the spot and gets shocked by Noelle's persistence. The butler then reveals that he has been searching for Noelle and never thought that she'd be hiding in the Borderlands. Noelle recognizes the butler as the one who killed Vanessa and reminds him about it. The butler also remembers her and is excited over the fact that both Vanessa and Noelle would be killed by the same monster. With no other option left, Noelle approaches to attack the monster once again, but all in vain. The butler then offers for her to serve him because he's into flat-chested lollies. He then reveals that Noelle possesses a special gift, the eyes of the fairy sovereign, Gramsite, and it would be a waste to kill her. Upon hearing this, Noelle utterly rejects his offer and asserts that she would be better off dying than becoming his slave. With no other option left, the butler instructs the monster to finish her, but Alan appears just in time to save her sorry ass. The butler, however, deems Alan an idiot for leaving the princess alone since the flat-chested lolly is already on her way to kill her. The lolly attacks Lise in her bed, but finds a pillow there with Lise and the useless knight standing behind her. Alan also reveals that he had forged a barrier to nullify invisibility, so the lolly can't do anything. Despite this, the butler is confident in her skills and believes that she will accomplish her mission. With all of this going on, the lolly confronts the useless Beatrice, and the greatest battle of all time begins. Beatrice has the upper hand, and just as she's about to finish her off, this brain-dead idiot stops her and Beatrice ends up getting cooked. Lolly then proceeds to kill the princess, but hesitates, which makes the princess realize that she is just being used. Just then, Beatrice appears out of nowhere and renders the lolly unconscious, hence marking the greatest comeback of all time. Meanwhile, Alan also manages to kill the monster as the butler pisses himself and skedaddled like a scaredy cat. Alan then carries the unconscious Noelle back to his inn where they come across Lise. Later on, they confront Lolly and question her regarding all of this. The lolly, however, refuses to answer their questions and remains silent even after Alan removes her slave contract. Beatrice suggests that they send her to the royal capital, but Lisey rejects her opinion because she's a woke feminist. Amidst all of this, Noelle remembers how Vanessa took her in when she was abandoned and decides to take the lolly with herself. After this, Alan locates the butler and surprises him with a massive slash. Before Alan could reach him, a demon approaches the butler and turns him into an annoying brat. The demon then reports everything to Alan's pathetic excuse for a father who is the mastermind behind all this. He mocks the demon for being too useless, who reassures him that he'll finish off the princess and Noelle soon enough. In the past, Princess Lisey was traveling alongside some constipated-looking guy as they were ambushed by monsters. The guy instructs Lisey to stay inside and rushes to counter the monsters. Lisey addresses him as uncle and peeks outside the window. Suddenly, a monster attacks her, and the guy saves her sorry ass. But his Yamcha-level attack didn't even tickle the monster, as it turned him into a nice little donut. The monster then ultimately devours him and throws him off the cliff. In the present, Alan and the others have reached a village where some random guys who can't mind their own damn business question their presence there. Alan dodges his question and asks if they are preparing for a festival, to which they reply positively. Lisey then questions if they have witnessed a guy in white armor hanging around the town, and much to their disappointment, they had not. Previously, Alan and the others were informed by Noelle that she had heard about a white armored ghost bearing a grudge against the royal family. This scares the living hell out of Beatrice and she pisses herself. She keeps claiming that she is not scared of ghosts, but Noelle and the lolly keep teasing her about this. Meanwhile, Alan decides to visit the cemetery since they failed to get any information from the NPCs. As they are walking, a weird guy appears from the bushes and Alan recognizes him as one of the villagers. The guy escorts them to the village chief and leaves. Alan, however, seems suspicious of the guy because he sounds like a drunk idiot. Like the other villagers, the village chief is clueless about this rumor and offers them to stay the night and witness the festival. Alan accepts his offer without asking Lisey and the useless knight, since their opinion doesn't matter because they're women. Later that night, Lisey dreams about her constipated uncle, who tells her the importance of trusting others. As Lisey wakes up, she notices the door open and her uncle standing outside the inn. She rushes towards him, but the uncle leads her to a cemetery where countless corpses ambush them. It turns out that Lisey was still dreaming as she suddenly wakes up and finds Alan standing beside her. Alan, who was here to steal her panties, gets a hug from Lisey out of nowhere. The following day, Alan and the others witness the weird festival. During the performance, the drunken idiot invites Alan and Beatrice to dance, while Lisey watches them from afar. Suddenly, she notices her uncle and follows him to the forest. It turns out that Lisey is not dreaming this time around, and her uncle looks constipated as ever. Lisey addresses him as father, but the guy reminds her that he never met her mom. He then reveals that he was hiding somewhere to take revenge from the royal family. He further tells her that her father, the king, wants to kill her, which confuses Lisey. The guy tells her that the king is targeting those with natural gifts, including Noelle, the general, the hero, and Lisey herself. All of them possess gifts that can take down the entire country, and the king fears them. He offers her to join him and help them defeat the king. Lisey, being a useless waste of space, believes that they can come to an understanding if they settle down and talk things through. This infuriates the uncle, and he proceeds to kill Lisey. Just then, Alan appears at the spot and saves her sorry once again. I've lost count of how many times Alan has saved this useless princess. Alan then uses his parallel paradox to nullify the spell cast on Lisey's uncle. With this, the uncle is back to his usual self as he tells Lisey that he is already dead and was brought back to life with magic. He further tells her that demons are behind all this, but his grudge against the royal family is real since he has hated his brother all this time. Before dying again, he asks Alan to take care of Lisey and challenges him to a battle. Alan accepts the challenge, considering that he is entrusting his precious daughter to him. As expected, Alan beats the living shit out of him because he wants to become a future wife-beater. With this, the constipated uncle dies in Lisey's thick thighs as she reminisces about the time they spent together. Tears begin rolling down her cheeks as the uncle makes his way to the underworld. After all this, Alan confronts the village chief because he had realized that he is the one behind all this. He had noticed that there were multiple dead people roaming around the village, but he didn't want to interfere because the village seemed peaceful. Just then, numerous dead bodies appear from the ground and ambush Alan, but he takes them down with a single slash. With all of this going on, Alan's father and his brother have managed to take down the archbishop's head, and meanwhile, Alan and the others continue their journey towards the royal capital. On their way, Lisey is informed by some knights that the general has returned out of nowhere. If you like what you're seeing, like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell. Watch this next video.